In a previous video I picked up this book, and it's been sitting on the table, and I've been reading a little bit of it and studying it, and for some reason I picked up this book, started to look at this again, and I made an interesting connection between the two. And so this book is the origin, if you like, of the Greek Western world view, and it's been around for over 2,500 years, and it's still studied widely by the elites in the universities. And it's surprising really that the lessons of it haven't been learned yet. Because one of the interesting things about the Greeks was they didn't like to fight at a distance. They did have archery, but archery for the bow and arrow, this was used mainly for hunting. And it's interesting that if you kill a stag, an animal, this was the origin, if you like, of some of the problems in here. Because it was, not allowed to just indiscriminately kill animals with bows and arrows. And so it was necessary to, what was the word, appease the gods. Now, appeasing the gods is simply making sure that it's right livelihood, yeah? It's not something that you just go and do. You just don't go and kill a whole pile of stuff. Now, I had a look at this book. This is a very interesting book. This is a book that everybody should read, To War with Whitaker. And there's a story in here about they just go and shoot thousands of ducks. How many thousands of ducks they shot, in the war. In Egypt, this area, whilst they were fighting a war, the elites were also shooting ducks. And they were eating bacon and eggs every morning, and they didn't have any shortage of anything. It's remarkable. And so to read a book like this, this is by Lady Ranfurly, Countess of Ranfurly. She was right up there, so she's like the global elite eye, if you like, on what's going on. If you really want to get an idea of what happened in World War II, in the eyes of a witness who was inside the elite officers running the show, not in London, so she didn't have the insider on that, but she had the inside in Africa, in Egypt, and Cairo, and places like that. So this is interesting. And you'll see that she was horrified by the bombing on both sides. And she knew it was wrong, okay? And it doesn't appease the gods. If you go bombing people, and there are certain right weapons of war, yeah? Now, one of the attributes of the sword is a very interesting weapon because it has a number of ways it can be used. First of all, it can be in the scabbard. So in the scabbard just means watch out. Don't be discourteous, because you can see I have a sword, yeah? Okay, and so if there's some sort of discourtesy involved, then the sword can be half drawn, right? Half drawn. You want to carry on? Yeah? Can be completely drawn. Okay, now, no, it doesn't mean you're going to die. It means you got 3 chances. Okay, 3 chances. Okay. So you've got the flat. I can whack you with the flat, around the neck or something like that. I can whack you with it, or on the back, or on the leg, or whatever, whatever. There are many signs, yeah, where you might get whacked. It's a very remarkable object, the sword. And then if you persist, there's the edge, you know. You can get a little cut or a big cut. And if you proceed to the utmost folly, then there's the point. Okay. And so there are many stages in which two men in battle have the option, okay, of changing their behavior. This doesn't happen with a gun. A gun is simply bang at a distance. You don't even see the person. Okay. Now we've got drones and we've got dropping bombs with thousands of people get killed in one. Tens of thousands can get killed. Hundreds of thousands now can get killed. One bomb. Okay. One mistake. And so the gods, the gods don't like this stuff. Okay. And so the gods don't like unfair play, and this can be seen. This is the Iliad is a study in what happens if you play unfairly at war. Play unfairly at war, or how wars originate just by doing unfair acts. Yeah. Now the war started because they took Helen away from her partner, her husband, and they took her to Troy, right? And so there was an act which needed to be corrected. Yeah, you can't allow people to do these things. It's the highest level. And so there are acts which can amount to war. That is a righteous thing. You can't just let that go. And so you can see that there were certain acts made against Russia which led up to the Ukraine war with acts of disrespect, and so you can't just, certain things you just can't let go. Okay. And there were acts that were made against Israel that you can't just let go. Okay. But there is a just response, okay, just response. And these guys will go and they will fight hand to hand, but before they take all their boats and their ships and their weapons. Okay, so this is Israel going to sort out Hamas, you know. The Greeks going to, the Achaeans going to, I think not necessarily the Greeks, the Achaeans going to sort out the Trojans, yeah. So they land and then they have a powwow, you know. The leaders come together and say, right, we're here, we're going to fight you unless we get satisfaction. We want Helen back, yeah. And so they get the opportunity to undo the bad deed, yeah. And it's interesting, the hostages, yeah. And so they say, no, we don't want to give it back. He said, well, the next thing is what do they do? We're all going to fight you. We're all going to fight you. And thousands of people are going to die. Why would you do that? Okay. So what you do is you put two protagonists on the battlefield. Two men fight, and you say whoever wins decides. Okay, right. So this was a chance that Troy had to save itself. This is a whole nation. Yeah, a whole nation is about to get clobbered over a single act. Right. And so what happened? That was an act of treachery against the foreigners. Yeah. Because what happened was the two fought, and the Achaeans, or the Greeks, won, the Trojans lost, and they didn't give back the girl. They ran away, and they come back fighting, and so that's it. Then there's a war, you know. Then the two sides fight one against the other. Okay. So you can see there's a certain righteous behavior, and we don't see this righteous behavior happening anymore in war. You know, there's no righteousness going on here. There's nothing but war can happen if you're not respectful in the negotiating process, nation to nation. Right. Now, there are other things in here. This whole story is about many events of this nature where people commit crimes against the other, and so their karma happens to them. In the end, Agamemnon takes Achilles' girl unrighteously from him, and his wife murders her, and I don't know, some bad stuff happens to him. I can't remember the actual details, but it's a study in righteous behaviour. And this is a book that the elites have studied in university. They should know this stuff. But you know, they're not intelligent. They've got good memories, but they don't do the work. Yeah. Now, if you've got a good memory, you might remember all the names of the gods and the goddess and all that stuff. But if you don't get the big picture, if you're too lost in the detail of it, you don't understand the big picture, well, you've got no intelligence, have you? So, to measure mechanical mental functioning isn't a test of intelligence. Test of intelligence, how do you test intelligence? I suppose you give somebody a book like this, you say, read the book, and when they come back you say, now, what did the book mean? And if they go, well, I don't know. Why are you asking me silly questions? Ask me about Hector. Ask me about Apollo. Yeah, what did they do? No. The intelligence is the overall overview, understanding of the overview. Okay. Now, there used to be a time in this fair land when we lived good lives, okay? And the animals were all here, the fields were here, we all worked together, we cooperated in nature. The Celts were this kind of a people, cooperated. They had the Druids who guided them, wise people who spent 20 years to become Druids, to understand the wisdom that this is trying to purvey. Okay. And then there came a time when first crossbows and bows were invented. Well, bows were always there, but crossbows were invented, and guns. And this was so that people who were not knights, who were not part of a spiritual warrior type, who had ethics of behavior with respect to warfare, yeah, people of this type, they wouldn't use a crossbow. They would use the sword and the lance, yeah. And it would mean close-up fighting. And you could knock each other around a bit. They had armour on. You could knock each other around a bit and, you know, probably defeat the other without killing them. I don't know. You have to go back there and find out what actually happened. You probably end up just exhausting yourself. But when you got the gun, now it's here they come, shoot them at a distance. It's a coward's weapon, okay, a coward's weapon, and it doesn't allow for nature and the gods, if you like. The gods is just nature, the laws of nature, to act properly. The event is over and done with. Now you've got to pay the consequences of it, yeah? You know, that woman who had a fight with her husband on the eclipse and killed him with a knife, put the kids in the car, drove off in the Porsche SUV, threw the kids out on the motorway, they died, and she ran into a tree and killed herself, yeah? This can happen quickly. Yeah, quickly. And this sort of karma, amplification of karma, happens very quickly with guns. So you can trace the development of this, okay? And so the Hussite wars were the first wars that were fought with guns, where guns overpowered knights. In Slovakia this was. And this moved into from that point onwards, I think the 14th century, it started to degenerate, and eventually all of the armies had guns, yeah. And so this, you can see the beginnings of. This is the start of the industrial age. You know, metalworking became not just a craft that is made by a special smith type, yeah, who are like high level, the highest level crafts people, yeah, making objects in metal. The guild of smiths. All of a sudden, these are replaced by factories, industrial factories, mass producing these kind of killing machines. Yeah. And so we've fallen into this, and you can see that the killing machines have just got worse and worse and worse. And a good night will have nothing to do with these kind of killing machines, not at all. And so it's not possible now to righteously join the army. It used to be the way for people to become masters, to become masters, was to join the army. The army, you would learn a trade in the army, and when you came out of the army, you'd be a man, and you'd also be capable of doing some kind of artistic trade. You might be an electronics engineer or a mechanical engineer, you know, learn bridge building, all sorts of things you can learn in the army. Yet now, if you go to the army, you're put in control of these terrible killing machines, which is not right livelihood, and so it's not possible to become a soldier anymore. And I did notice, I watched a video the other day of one of the few young Israeli men who were speaking out and becoming non-participants. They had to go to prison, and he's in prison, in a military prison they put him, because he says he won't fight this unrighteous war. He won't fight in it. It's the end of it. He's not going to fight. He's not going to kill people. Yeah, and it's necessary for all of us to take the similar stand and say, we will not fight. We will not use these terrible weapons, yeah, because they just lead to more and more and more killing. And you can see what happened in World War I, World War II. It just got worse and worse and worse until we had Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Dresden, all these terrible fire bombings and destruction of everything. Okay, and it's not allowed to just destroy everything. It's not the way to. You can't win a war by destroying the economic viability of a nation. What's that? That's cheating. Yeah, if you want to fight a war, you have to put yourself forward as, you know, that your leader will physically fight against the leader of the other nation, one-on-one, maybe with one hand tied behind each other's back so they can't do too much damage to each other, and see what happens, see who wins, and then at least it gives the gods chance, nature chance, to produce the accidents that will make one the winner of the other. Okay? There are no accidents. The divine providence that allows one to win against another. And if you win by overwhelming odds, anybody can win by overwhelming odds or by overwhelming technology. Anybody can win. You've got this stuff. You can see how the very, very, very bad people who had these guns and stuff, how they forced the other nations to also have weapons. And one of the things that they forced other people to do was to increase their armaments industry, which is based on the iron and steel making industry. So countries like Japan they only had a primitive steel making industry. They made these wonderful steel objects, and they made them to last forever, yet they were not able to produce them in vast quantities required to make steel ships, steel tanks, steel cannons. You know, there's a lot of steel you need to go this kind of all-out, kill a lot of them approach, yeah, cheating at war approach. And so they had to create a steel industry And they also, to create their steel industry, they had no iron ore. So the first thing the Japanese did was they went and fought against the Russians, the East Russia, and Korea to get iron ore, you see. And so you can see the origin of this attacking other nations, once you get to this kind of stuff, is to get the mineral resources so that you can protect yourself against these bad nations, the Americans and the British, who had all this stuff, had all this stuff. So that's why the Japanese did it. They probably didn't want to do it, but they had to if they were going to protect themselves. And so it's important to understand the base of this, because now I saw just yesterday that the last of the British steel-making industry is being shut down. And so we won't have steel-making industry anymore. And so we're back to before, where the Japanese were before the war. And this is good, really, because this steel-making industry is really at the bottom of all of these world problems. To make the steel, you need loads of energy. Oil. Now we've got all the trouble in the Middle East, It's what people now, and then electricity, gas, Russian gas, wherever you've got, it's all related to the steel making, really, to the industrial sector, because these are the people who need the resources to carry out what they're doing. So Britain has no real ability to produce steel. If it's just left by itself, it probably doesn't have sufficient iron ore to actually make steel in any quantity, and is completely dependent upon other countries to supply these raw materials. So it's not natural for Britain to be some kind of great arms maker like this. It's not natural. And so to understand what's at the bottom of the whole problem, is it's simply that some countries, and now whole groups of countries gathered together as globalists, want the resources of other countries so that they can continue to stay ahead of the game and build better and more powerful weapons than anybody else. So they can have unrighteous war, and end up destroying their populations. Now, there is a word, population. The population, the people, populace, the people, and popularist, the popularist is someone who represents the people. Now, democracy is supposed to be representative of the people. And so when you call a leader a populist, you're actually saying he's a democratic person, And if you put down populism as some kind of bad thing, then you must be the bad guys, because you must be the globalists, the elite, the oligarchy who is working against the populace, And you can see that this is exactly what we've got. We've got countries who are part of some kind of elite club who, if you want to be a member, you've got to do exactly what they say. Build the same kind of terrible weapons, buy them off them, and support them financially. And then you can be part of the boys' club, Unfortunately, this is a very, very, very small minority of the country, the people, who have really committed treason against the people themselves and have undermined popular democracy. And these people have to go, I'm afraid. They just have to go. And so if you want to get an insight into these people, this is a book to read. It's a remarkable book, very, very, very readable, and everything this lady writes, it's marvelous. It's just so interesting. Thank you for watching. because they're top of the pile doesn't mean their vision is the clearest. The voices of the people, they're falling on deaf ears. As politicians all meet up on Grindr, they must declare their sexuality before their rising star. Is there more to a seat on Parliament than showing off your arse? And the best of all the spare bunch, they're shouting to be heard. But the sound of popularis rising